A long, long time ago, in a great kingdom, so rich that even the goats ate from golden plates, there lived a prince. He was tall, handsome, but with an attitude sharper than a lion's claw. They say he walked with his nose so high in the air, you'd think he could smell the sun itself. Every maiden in the kingdom trembled when his eyes fell on them, for he did not just reject them. Oh no, he mocked them, laughed at them, and measured them from head to toe, like a mad sailor in a market. Short, round, too soft, he would snort and send them home crying. Yet he remained unmarried, and the elders shook their heads, whispering, "This boy will never find a wife unless the gods themselves drop one from the sky." But Prince Obina laughed more and said, "I will only marry a woman whose beauty will make the moon jealous." If only he knew. Anyway, let's continue. So, Prince Obina went about carrying himself like the Alpha and the Omega. He summoned maidens from every corner of the kingdom. One by one, they arrived with trembling hearts. They came prepared with various kinds of gifts, hoping to win even a smile from his stained lips. But the prince, he measured them like a trader measuring garri. He pinched their waists, he frowned at their smiles, and snorted at their hair. "You," he pointed at a girl with bright, curious eyes. "Your smile is too wide. It makes you look like a greedy hyena." Gasps filled the courtyard. But Prince Obina was not finished. "And you," he said to another, "your waist is too small. A woman with such a waist cannot carry royal children." He moved down the line, tearing each maiden apart with words sharper than a hunter's knife. Some wept silently, others bit their lips in shame. The queen shifted uncomfortably on her stool, but Obina continued as though the maidens were ants before him. When he reached the last girl, the daughter of a wealthy chief, he said loudly enough for all to hear, "You dare to stand before me with that face? Go back and tell your father I would rather marry a goat than share a bed with you." The courtyard erupted in murmurs. The humiliated maiden ran out crying, her mother rushing after her. The king's staff of authority trembled in his hand, but he held his tongue. The queen pressed her fingers to her forehead, hiding her shame. That night, the palace was filled with silence, heavier than a storm. The king called his son privately. "Obina, my son," he said, "what do you gain from shaming these maidens? You are not choosing a bag of kola nuts. These are daughters of our land." But Obina only chuckled. "Father, I am a prince. Why should I settle for ordinary? If the gods want me to marry, let them carve a maiden from the moon and send her to me." The king sighed. "Pride is a sickness, Obina. If you are not careful, it will destroy you." But the young prince only waved his father's words away like a buzzing mosquito. In his heart, he believed nothing, not man, not maiden, not even the gods, could bring him down. And so, his pride grew unchecked. Whenever the maidens gathered at the stream, they mocked his insults, imitating his deep voice. When he passed by the market, some bowed respectfully, while others whispered curses under their breath. But did Obina care? No. To him, the world was full of imperfect people, and he alone stood flawless like the sun. Little did he know that his laughter would soon turn to tears, and his pride would be crushed under the weight of a secret too heavy for any man. The moon was high the night she arrived. Some swore the air grew colder, and the crickets quiet as if the land itself held its breath. Her name was Adeze, and she was unlike any maiden the people had ever seen. She came with a small entourage. Her steps were calculated. Even the boldest men forgot their words. Her skin glowed like fresh palm oil, smooth and flawless. Her eyes were large, almond-shaped, and they seemed to hold secrets that could swallow a man whole. Her lips were curved in a way that promised sweetness but warned of fire. The news spread faster than palm wine at a festival. A maiden more beautiful than the morning sun has entered the village. The villagers whispered that perhaps the gods had answered the prince's boastful demand. Women shook their heads, muttering, "Beauty that shines like that must surely carry something hidden." But men, even old men with shaky knees, wished they could be young again, just to chase her shadow. When Prince Obina laid his eyes on Adeze, his proud heart skipped. For the first time, he was struck dumb. The same mouths that insulted maidens until they wept could not form a single cruel word. Instead, he said, "She is the one. This is the maiden I want to marry." The king and queen exchanged weary glances, but relief washed over them. At last, their stubborn son had chosen a bride, and without delay, preparations for the grand wedding began. Drummers rehearsed day and night until their hands blistered. Palm wine flowed like rivers. Hunters brought antelopes, goats, and bushmeats for the feasts. Women pounded yam until their backs ached, laughing that they were cooking for a wedding that would be remembered for generations. On the day of the marriage, the whole kingdom gathered. The palace courtyard was decorated with bright clothes and palm fronds. Chiefs from neighboring lands arrived with gifts, ivory bracelets, golden trinkets. The air was filled with music and the smell of roasted meat. When Adeze appeared in her bridal attire, the crowd gasped. Beads of coral glistened against her neck. Her wrapper shimmered like water under sunlight, and her smile made men dizzy. Even the maidens she had outshone could not help but stare in awe. Prince Obina stood tall, proud as ever, but this time his pride was not in himself. It was in the jewel that was now his wife, he thought. The gods have indeed carved a maiden from the moon and sent her to me. The ceremonies went smoothly. The elders blessed the union, pouring libations to the gods of the land. The king nodded in approval, and the queen sighed with relief. By nightfall, the villagers were drunk on wine, dance, and joy. But as the stars glittered above and the drums grew softer, the real story began inside the prince's chamber. Adeze sat quietly on the edge of the marriage bed. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Prince Obina, impatient as always, strode towards her with a smirk. "My bride," he said, "tonight you will give me what I deserve." The kingdom waits for an heir. Adese's eyes glistened, but not with excitement. "My prince," she said softly, "I beg you, listen to me. There is something you must know before you touch me, for your sake and for mine." But Obina only laughed, waving his hand dismissively. "Save your words for the marketplace, woman. Tonight you are mine." Adaeze shook her head, her voice trembling. Please, if you force me, you will regret it. The gods have tied my beauty with a secret. My body is not like other women's. To touch me carelessly is to invite death. Obina's pride fled. Death? Do you think I, Prince Obina, heir to the throne, can be threatened by a woman's warning? Do you not know that men would give their lives just to kiss your feet? And you think I will tremble because of some foolish tale? He reached for her, but Adaeze drew back, tears rolling down her cheeks. Please, my husband, listen. If you take me against my will, you will have only 3 days to live. Her words were like cold water splashed on fire, but Obina's arrogance burned hotter. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her close. Enough of your riddles, he hissed. Tonight, I am the man, and you are the woman. The kingdom will not mock me as a weak husband. And so, blinded by pride and lust, Prince Obina forced himself upon his bride. The chamber grew silent. The oil lamp flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Adaeze lay still, her tears glistening. When Obina finally withdrew, panting, she sat up slowly, her face pale as the moonlight streaming through the window. She looked him straight in the eye and said in a voice cold as stone, "It is done. You refused to listen. Now you have 3 days to live." Obina froze. His laughter hung in his throat. His chest tightened. His hands trembled. "What did you say?" he whispered. His arrogance faltered for the first time. Adaeze's eyes held no malice, only sorrow. "You mocked the maidens of this land. You mocked even the warnings of the gods. Now, the curse tied to my body has become yours. Unless you learn humility and seek forgiveness, your life will end with the setting of the third sun." Outside, the drums still beat, and the people still danced, celebrating a marriage they thought was blessed. But inside the chamber, the prince, who once mocked every maiden, now trembled before the woman he had claimed as his own. And so began the fall of Prince Obina. By the time the first rooster crowed the next morning, whispers had already begun to slither through the palace, like snakes in tall grass. The servants had heard muffled sobs, and one maid swore she saw the prince stumble from his chamber looking pale and shaken. In the market square, gossip grew wings. The maidens he once mocked were the loudest. "Did you hear? The proud prince forced himself on his bride last night." "Eh?" And she told him he has only 3 days to live. 3 days? Ha! So all his boasting, all his insults, ended in begging for what other men receive freely. They clapped their hands, laughing until tears rolled down their cheeks. The same maidens who once trembled under his cruel tongue now found joy in his disgrace. Oh, he rejected sweet maidens only to fall into the trap of the one whose beauty carries death. Back in the palace, Prince Obina sat trembling on his throne. His once bright eyes were shadowed with fear. The arrogance that had been his crown now weighed on him like a curse. He had tried to laugh off Adaeze's warning, but each beat of his heart seemed heavier, as though time itself mocked him. On the second morning, his body weakened, his steps faltered, and his voice cracked. The king, alarmed, summoned the palace healer, who examined the prince and shook his head. There is no sickness here. What afflicts him is beyond herbs and roots. This is the hand of the gods. The queen wept, clutching her son. Then, what must be done? The healer's voice was grave. The oracle must be consulted. Only the gods can reveal a path to life. And so, a great procession was arranged. Drummers beat slow, heavy rhythms as the prince, now weak and trembling, was carried on a mat to the shrine of the oracle. The people gathered to watch, some with pity, others with cruel satisfaction. At the shrine, the air was thick with smoke from burning incense. The oracle, an old woman with white painted skin and eyes clouded like mist, sat upon a carved stool. She raised her staff and spoke without being told why they had come. The gods are not blind, she began, her voice echoing. The prince mocked the maidens of the land, scorning the daughters of his people. He took pride as his shield and arrogance as his crown. And now, in his pride, he has forced himself upon the one maiden bound by a curse older than this kingdom. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The oracle struck the ground with her staff. Hear me, Prince Obina. 3 days are all that remain to you. If you do not humble yourself, if you do not beg forgiveness from the gods and the very women you insulted, your breath shall cease on the third night. Prince Obina's lips trembled. For the first time in his life, he bowed his head. But it was not in reverence. It was in fear. What must I do? He whispered, his pride breaking like a pot on the ground. The oracle's eyes gleamed. You must bow before those you mocked. You must kneel before your people, confess your wrongs, and beg the forgiveness of the maidens you humiliated. Only then will the gods hear your cry. Only then will the curse upon you be broken. The crowd buzzed with disbelief. The proud prince kneeled before maidens, the same maidens he once called ugly, worthless, unfit for a throne. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting to see his response. For a long moment, Prince Obina said nothing. His chest rose and fell, his jaw tightened. The pride in him wrestled with the fear of death. His hands clenched into fists, then loosened again. Finally, his voice cracked as he spoke. If that is the path, then I will walk it. And so, the journey of the proud prince towards humility began. The next day, he was led to the market square, his royal garments replaced with simple white clothes. His crown was removed. His feet were bare. The people gathered, eager to witness what none thought was possible. Prince Obina stood, trembling before the maidens. Their eyes blazed with triumph, some with bitterness, others with curiosity. Slowly, he sank to his knees. His voice broke as he spoke. I mocked you. I shamed you. I called you names that no man should call a daughter of this land. I was proud. I was blind. And for my sins, I am dying. I beg you, have mercy on me. Forgive me. The marketplace fell silent. Even the goats nearby seemed to pause. For the first time in his life, Prince Obina shed tears, and the ground drank them eagerly. But forgiveness was not easy to come by. One maiden spat on the ground. You mocked me before the people. Now you kneel? Do you think tears can wash away shame? Another folded her arms. Let the curse finish its work, He deserves it. Only a few murmured that perhaps he should be spared, for had he not already been humbled enough? The sun dipped low, painting the sky red. The people waited. The gods listened, and Prince Obina's heart trembled like a drum skin stretched too tight. Would forgiveness come before the third night, or would the curse claim him, as Adaeze had warned? The third day dawned heavy, as if the heavens themselves held their breath. Dark clouds gathered over the kingdom, and the air smelled of rain and judgment. In the palace, Prince Obina lay on his bed, his body weak, his breath shallow. Each beat of his heart felt like the strike of a drum, counting down to the end. The maidens had not yet given him their forgiveness. Some still burned with resentment. Others feared that the curse tied to Adaeze was beyond human mercy. The king sat at his son's side, his hands shaking. "You are my only heir," he whispered. "Must pride bury the hope of a kingdom?" Adaeze stood quietly in a corner, her face unreadable. She had warned him, she had begged him, yet he had chosen violence over patience. Still, a tear slid down her cheek. By midday, the oracle was summoned once more. She arrived with the rattle of cowries and the scent of burning herbs. "The time is almost gone," she said. "If forgiveness does not come before the setting of the third sun, the prince's life will be taken." So the people gathered once more at the marketplace. This time, Prince Obina was too weak to walk. He was carried on a mat. His once proud face was pale. His crownless head bowed. His eyes searched the crowd of maidens desperately. "Please," he croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wronged you. I mocked your faces, your families, your worth. I thought myself above you. But today, I kneel in the dust, begging for what I once trampled. Have mercy. Forgive me." The crowd murmured. Some turned their faces away. Others watched in silence. Finally, one maiden, the first he had ever humiliated before the palace, stepped forward. Her eyes were hard, but her voice wavered. "You called me a goat, unfit to be seen by men. My family wept that day. I carried shame for months. Do you know how deep those wounds cut?" Tears welled in Obina's eyes. He lowered his head to the ground, pressing his forehead into the dust. "I know now, and if the gods spare me, I will never again raise my tongue to wound another. Forgive me." The maiden hesitated. Her chest rose and fell. Then slowly, she placed her hand on his head. "I forgive you." A murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. Another maiden stepped forward. "If she forgives you, then I forgive you too." One by one, the maidens came. Some placed hands on his shoulders, others whispered words he could barely hear, until at last all had spoken, and the weight of their anger lifted like smoke. Suddenly, thunder cracked across the sky. Rain poured down, drenching the marketplace. The people gasped as the oracle lifted her staff and cried out, "The gods have heard. The curse is broken." Prince Obina gasped, his chest rising with newfound strength. Color returned to his face, and for the first time in days, he stood on his own feet. The crowd erupted in cheers, though some still watched with weary eyes. But Adaeze, The maiden who had carried the dark secret did not smile. She stepped forward, her wet garment clinging to her like a shadow. Her voice rang clear even through the rain. Do not rejoice too quickly. You think the curse has ended, but it was never about you alone, Obina. My beauty has been both a gift and a prison. The gods bound me with a spell that any man who took me in pride would face death. Only humility could break it. Now that you have bent your head and you have freed yourself and me, Obina's eyes widened. You mean? Yes, Adeze whispered, tears mingling with the rain. I was cursed to live without love, for all men who sought me did so out of desire, not humility. You, Obina, were no different. But now you have been changed. The oracle nodded. It is true. The curse is lifted from both of you. What was once pride has been broken, and what was once bound has been set free. Prince Obina fell to his knees again, not in weakness, but in gratitude. He looked up at Adeze, his voice steady. Forgive me for not listening, for forcing you, for making your curse my punishment. I do not deserve you. But if you will allow it, I will spend my life honoring you. Adeze's lips trembled, then curved into the faintest smile. Then, perhaps, at last, love can begin. The people shouted with joy. Drums beat through the rain, and voices rose in celebration. And so, my people, that is how the proud prince, who mocked all the maidens of the kingdom, finally learned humility. From that day on, Prince Obina ruled with a gentle heart, laughter in his palace, and respect for every person, from the richest trader to the humblest goat herder. Adeze, wise and beautiful, stood by his side, her secret no longer a curse, but a lesson for all. Mothers told their children, do not mock, do not scorn, for pride comes before a fall. And the children laughed, the drums thundered, and even the goats, yes, even the goats, seemed to nod in agreement. So, remember, my friends, the most important lesson from this story. Pride comes before a fall. Even the Bible says that God resists the poor. Be humble, because good things come to those who humble themselves. Did you enjoy this story? Let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe for more interesting stories. Enjoy the rest of your day. Love you all. Bye.